Let me start with a confession, because I think it sets the tone for the next 20-odd minutes we're going to spend together. A few years ago, a man came into my office. Let's call him Raymond, because that wasn't his name and he'd probably be annoyed if I used the real one. Raymond was in his late 50s, fit-ish, walked his dog every morning, and he sat down across from me holding a little orange pill bottle like it was a hand grenade. He put it on my desk and he said, "Doc, I've been taking this thing every night for 6 years. My brother-in-law told me it's poison. My neighbor swears it saved his life. My wife read something on the internet that scared her half to death. So just tell me straight, am I taking this for nothing?" And I loved that question. I loved it because it's honest, and because the honest answer is not a yes and it's not a no. The honest answer is, it depends entirely on who you are. And by the time we finish here, you're going to understand exactly what it depends on, so that when you look at your own little orange bottle, or when your doctor reaches for the prescription pad, you'll actually know what's happening and why. Not in vague, hand-wavy terms, in real ones. So pour yourself a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's talk about statins like two adults who respect each other. First, let's clear up what these things even do, because most people carry around a cartoon version of it in their heads. When you hear the word cholesterol, your brain probably pictures some greasy yellow sludge slowly gluing your arteries shut, like grease down a kitchen drain. That image isn't entirely wrong, but it's about as accurate as saying a car is a thing with wheels. Cholesterol is not the villain in a mustache-twirling sense. Your body makes it on purpose. You need it. It builds the walls of every single cell you own. It's the raw material for hormones like testosterone and estrogen. It helps you make vitamin D. It's part of how you digest fat. If you had zero cholesterol, you'd be dead. So we're not fighting cholesterol itself. We're fighting a specific troublemaker, and its name is low-density lipoprotein, the thing everyone shortens to LDL. Think of your bloodstream as a delivery network. Cholesterol can't just swim through your blood on its own, because blood is watery, and cholesterol is fatty, and fat and water don't mix. You've seen that in a bottle of salad dressing. So the body wraps cholesterol up in little protein delivery trucks, and LDL is one type of truck. The problem is that LDL trucks have a bad habit. When there are too many of them driving around, some of them crash into the walls of your arteries, get stuck, and start a slow, quiet fire, inflammation, underneath the surface of the vessel. Over years, decades even, that buildup forms a plaque. And a plaque is a bit like a pimple under the skin of your artery. Most of the time it just sits there. But one day, a plaque can rupture. And when it ruptures, your body panics and slams a clot on top of it. And that clot blocks the pipe. And if that pipe feeds your heart, that's a heart attack. And if it feeds your brain, that's a stroke. That, in about 90 seconds, is the entire tragedy in miniature. Now here's where the statin walks onto the stage. Your liver is the main factory where cholesterol gets manufactured. A statin walks into that factory and quietly turns down one specific machine, an enzyme with an unpronounceable name that I'm not going to make you memorize. When the factory slows down, something clever happens. The liver notices it doesn't have enough cholesterol lying around, so it puts out more little grabbing hooks on its surface, receptors, that reach into the bloodstream and pull LDL trucks out of circulation. Fewer trucks on the road means fewer crashes into your artery walls. That's the whole mechanism. A statin doesn't scrub your arteries clean like a plumber with a snake. It changes the traffic. It lowers the number of dangerous trucks driving around every single day. And it does something else that we didn't fully appreciate for years. It seems to calm that quiet fire, the inflammation, and it helps stabilize the plaques you already have so they're less likely to rupture. So it's part traffic reduction, part fire suppression. Keep both of those in your head, because they matter later. Now, the question that brought Raymond to my office: are you taking it for nothing? To answer that, I have to introduce you to the single most important idea in this entire conversation. And it's an idea that the headlines, the supplement sellers, and honestly, a lot of doctors do a terrible job of explaining. It's the difference between two groups of people, and once you understand which group you're in, everything else snaps into focus. The first group is people who have already had the event. They've already had a heart attack, or a stroke, or they've had a stent put in, or bypass surgery, or they've been told they have significant blockages. If that's you, the medical world has a phrase for it: secondary prevention. And I want to be as clear as I possibly can be here, because this is the part where there is no real debate, no genuine controversy, no matter what your brother-in-law says. For people in this group, statins are one of the most well-proven, life-extending medications we have in all of medicine. We are talking about decades of research, hundreds of thousands of patients, trial after trial after trial, all pointing the same direction. If you've already had cardiovascular disease show its face, a statin meaningfully lowers your chance of it coming back to kill you. In that situation, stopping your statin because of something you read is genuinely one of the more dangerous things you could do to yourself. So if you're in that first group and you're waiting for me to give you permission to quit, I'm not going to. I'm going to look you in the eye through this camera and tell you that pill is doing serious work. But here's the thing. Most people watching this are probably not in that first group. Most people are in the second group, and this is where the whole story gets genuinely interesting. The second group is people who have never had a heart attack, never had a stroke, never had a stent. Their arteries, as far as anyone knows, are fine. But their cholesterol numbers came back a little high, or they've got some risk factors stacking up, blood pressure creeping, a bit of extra weight around the middle, a family history, maybe some blood sugar issues, and their doctor said, let's get you on a statin, just to be safe. This is called primary prevention, prevention of a first event. And this, my friends, is the gray zone. This is where the honest answer to, am I taking it for nothing, becomes a real, thoughtful maybe. Let me show you why. And to do it, I need to teach you a trick that will change how you read every health headline for the rest of your life. It's the difference between relative risk and absolute risk. Stay with me because this is the single most manipulated number in all of medicine. And once you can see through it, you can't unsee it. Imagine a headline that screams, "This pill cuts your risk of a heart attack by 50%. Sounds enormous, right? 50%. Half. Who wouldn't take that? But that number, 50%, is a relative number. And relative numbers are slippery little things because they hide the starting point. Let me give you the same fact in absolute terms. Suppose that out of 100 people like you, over the next 10 years, 2 of them were going to have a heart attack without the pill. And with the pill, only 1 of them does. Well, going from 2 to 1 is a 50% reduction. The headline is technically true, but in the real world, in absolute terms, the pill helped 1 person out of 100. The other 99 got no benefit at all from that particular outcome. 98 were never going to have the heart attack in that window anyway, and 1 was going to have it regardless. The pill only changed the story for a single person out of the 100. Now, is that worth it? For a cheap, generally safe, once-a-day pill? A lot of reasonable people would say, yes, absolutely. I want to be that one person. Sign me up. But a lot of other equally reasonable people would look at that and say, 1 in 100 over 10 years for a daily pill I have to remember that might give me side effects, that makes me feel like a patient every single night? Let me think harder about that. And here is the crucial point that I need you to tattoo on the inside of your eyelids. Both of those people are being rational. There's no obviously correct answer. It depends on your values, your risk tolerance, and above all, your actual starting risk. Because that's the lever that changes everything. The relative benefit of a statin, the roughly 1/5 to 1/4 reduction in risk, stays fairly steady across people. But your starting risk is wildly different depending on who you are. If you're a person whose true 10-year risk of a heart attack is quite high, then shaving off that fraction saves a meaningful number of real people. If you're a person whose true 10-year risk is genuinely low, then shaving off the same fraction moves almost nobody. Same pill, same percentage, completely different value depending entirely on where you started. So when Raymond asked me, am I taking this for nothing? The real question underneath his question was, what was my starting risk and how much did this actually move the needle for me? And that is a question you cannot answer from a YouTube video, and you cannot answer from your neighbor's opinion, and you certainly cannot answer from a supplement ad. You can only answer it by sitting down with someone who knows your numbers, your history, your family, your whole picture. Now let me pause here because we're at the heart of it, and I want to hear from you. I'm curious, and I read these, I really do. I want you to tell me down in the comments, are you in that first group or that second group? Have you already had an event, or are you taking a statin or considering one purely as prevention? And whichever group you're in, did anyone ever actually explain your starting risk to you before you got that prescription? Or did you just get handed a bottle and a take one at night? Type it out. 1 word, 1 sentence, a whole paragraph, I don't care. Because I promise you, someone scrolling through those comments is going to feel a lot less alone when they see they're not the only one who was never told the full story. Go ahead, I'll wait. And if this is starting to make things click for you, that little thumbs up genuinely helps me keep making these, and it costs you nothing but a tap. All right, let's talk about the thing everyone's really afraid of, side effects. Because I can already hear some of you thinking, fine, the benefit is real for some people, but I heard these things destroy your muscles and give you diabetes and rot your brain. So let's go through it like grown-ups, with no scare tactics and no sugarcoating, because you deserve both barrels of the truth. The big one, the complaint I hear more than any other, is muscle aches. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's all in your head because that's insulting and it's not accurate. Some people genuinely get muscle discomfort on statins, and in a small number of people, it's real and it's caused by the drug and it goes away when they stop. There's also a genuinely serious muscle problem that statins can cause in very rare cases, where muscle tissue actually breaks down. But I want to be precise here. That is rare. We're talking a tiny fraction of a percent, and it usually announces itself loudly with severe pain and dark urine, not a vague ache. That's a call your doctor today situation, and thankfully almost nobody watching this will ever meet it. But here's the fascinating, uncomfortable, genuinely important part about the everyday muscle aches. When researchers did a very clever kind of study, where they gave people a statin some months and a dummy pill other months, and neither the patient nor the doctor knew which was which, something remarkable came out. A large chunk of the muscle symptoms showed up just as much on the dummy pill as on the real statin. In other words, a great deal of the aching that people blame on the drug appears to be driven by expectation. If you take a pill every night that you've been warned might hurt your muscles, and you're a human being over 40 who, let's be honest, already has some aches and pains that come with the territory, your brain starts connecting the dots and blaming the pill. This has a name. It's called the nocebo effect, the evil twin of the placebo effect. It doesn't mean your pain isn't real. The pain is completely real. You're really feeling it. It means the pill may not be the cause. And that matters enormously, because I've watched people quit a medication that was genuinely protecting them over a symptom that wasn't even coming from the medication. If you're having muscle symptoms, please, don't just quietly stop and stew about it. Tell your doctor. There are ways to test this: switching the drug, lowering the dose, doing a careful on-again, off-again trial that can sort out real from nocebo and get you an answer you can actually trust. Then there's the diabetes worry. And this one I'll give to you straight because it's real. Statins do slightly nudge up your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. That's true. It's a genuine effect, not a myth. But two things. First, the effect is small, and it tends to matter most in people who were already teetering right on the edge of diabetes anyway. The drug seems to give a little push to someone who is already walking toward the cliff. Second, and this is the part people forget, the same people who are edging toward diabetes are usually exactly the people at higher heart risk, which means they're often the people the statin helps most. So it becomes a balancing act, not a deal breaker. And it's a conversation to have openly, rather than a reason to panic. What about the brain? The memory fog, the "I feel like I lost a step" complaints. For years, there were scattered worries about statins and thinking. And it's worth taking seriously. But when the large, careful studies went looking for it, they did not find convincing evidence that statins are stealing your memory or your sharpness. That doesn't mean no individual ever felt foggy. Bodies are strange and individual. But as a general rule, the fear that these drugs are quietly dimming your mind is not well supported by the good evidence we have. And there's even a reasonable argument running the other way, because whatever protects the pipes to your heart is also protecting the pipes to your brain, and preventing the small, silent strokes that genuinely do chip away at thinking over the years. So put it all together, and the honest side effect picture looks like this. Real muscle problems in a small number of people. A lot of muscle complaints that turn out to be expectation rather than the drug. A small, genuine bump in diabetes risk, mostly in people already at the edge. And a brain scare that mostly hasn't held up. That's not a monster. It's also not candy. It's a real medication with real trade-offs, which is exactly what it should be treated as. Soberly, individually, with your own doctor. Now let me come back to that provocative question in the title, because I don't want to weasel out of it. Are you taking them for nothing? Here is my honest, 17 years in practice answer, and I want you to hold on to it. If you have already had heart disease, a heart attack, a stroke, a stent, you are almost certainly not taking it for nothing. and I would think very, very hard before touching that bottle without a serious conversation. If you're a person at high risk who hasn't had an event yet, high blood pressure, family history, blood sugar creeping up, the whole cluster, then the statin is probably pulling real weight for you too, even if the benefit feels invisible, because prevention always feels like nothing, right up until the day it turns out to have been everything. Prevention is thankless like that. Nobody ever feels the heart attack they didn't have. But, and here's where I'll be the friend who tells you the awkward truth. If you are a genuinely low-risk person who got put on a statin somewhat reflexively, because a single number on a lab sheet looked a touch high, and it was easier to write a prescription than to have a 20-minute conversation, then yes, it's fair and reasonable to ask whether that pill is doing enough for you to be worth it. Not to storm off and quit, to ask. To go back to your doctor and say, walk me through my actual 10-year risk, and walk me through how much this specific pill lowers it for me, in real numbers, not percentages. A good doctor will welcome that question. If your doctor gets defensive or waves it away, that tells you something too. And this brings me to the thing I most want you to walk away with. The thing that's bigger than any pill. A statin, at its very best, is a supporting actor. It is never the star of the show. Because here's what I've watched happen more times than I can count. Someone gets put on a statin, and somewhere in the back of their mind, a little voice goes, "Great, I'm covered now. The pill's handling my heart, so I can keep doing what I'm doing." And they keep smoking, or the daily takeout stays daily, or the walking shoes stay by the door untouched, or the stress just keeps grinding away. And that is the real for nothing. Not the pill itself, the false sense of a hall pass. Because a statin lowers one type of dangerous truck on your artery highway, but it does absolutely nothing about the cigarette that's inflaming every vessel in your body, or the belly fat that's pumping out inflammation like a little factory, or the blood pressure that's hammering your artery walls with every beat, or the fact that you haven't broken a proper sweat since sometime in the previous decade. The things that actually move the needle on how long and how well you live are frankly unglamorous and free. Moving your body most days, not marathons, just a real walk, briskly enough that talking gets a little effortful. Eating in a way where most of what's on your plate grew out of the ground or swam in the sea, rather than came out of a crinkly package with a cartoon on it. Sleeping like it's a medical treatment, because it is one. Not smoking, full stop, no negotiation. Keeping your blood pressure in check. Handling stress before it hardens into something worse. None of that comes in an orange bottle. None of it makes a pharmaceutical company a penny, and all of it does more for the average person than any single pill ever will. The statin, if you need it, sits on top of that foundation. It was never meant to replace the foundation. When people take the pill instead of building the foundation, that's when they really are, in the deepest sense, taking it for nothing. So what do you actually do with all of this? Not tomorrow, not someday, this week. You have one conversation, and I'm going to give you the exact shape of it so you walk in prepared instead of nervous. You sit down with the doctor who prescribed your statin, or the one you're about to get it from, and you ask 3 honest things. You ask, what is my actual risk of a heart problem over the next 10 years, in plain numbers? You ask, how much does this specific pill lower that risk for someone like me? And you ask, given my whole picture, do you still think the trade-off is worth it? And what would you do if you were me? That's it. That's the whole conversation. It's not confrontational, it's collaborative, and any doctor worth their salt will respect you more for asking it, not less. You are not being difficult. You are being the kind of patient who lives longer because you're finally an active participant in your own body instead of a passenger. And please, I have to say this plainly because I care about the person actually sitting there listening. Do not take anything I've said today as a signal to go home and flush your pills down the toilet tonight. That is not what this was. Nothing I've told you replaces the person who knows your numbers and your history and can look at all of you at once. If something here made you uneasy about your own prescription, the answer is not to quit in secret. The answer is to book the appointment and ask the questions. Stopping a statin the wrong way, especially if you're in that first group, can genuinely cost you. So bring your questions to the person who can actually answer them for you specifically. Let me leave you where we started, with Raymond and his hand grenade of a pill bottle. When he asked me if he was taking it for nothing, we spent 20 minutes going through his real numbers, his history, his pressure, his family. The little stent he'd conveniently forgotten to mention was in his chest. And by the end, Raymond understood, for the first time in 6 years, exactly why that pill was in his life and exactly what it was buying him. He didn't quit, but he also stopped treating it like either a poison or a miracle and started treating it like what it was, one useful tool, doing one specific job, resting on top of the daily choices that were actually keeping him alive. He walked out standing a little taller, not because I told him what to do, but because for the first time, he understood it well enough to own the decision himself. That's all I want for you. Not fear, not blind obedience, not internet panic. Just understanding, the real, textured, grown-up kind, so that the next time you hold that little orange bottle, you know precisely what it is, what it isn't, and whether it's earning its place in your life. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of that heart of yours. It's the only one you've got, and it's been beating for you this whole time without ever once asking for a day off. The least we can do is understand how to look after it.